Hello, and welcome to Raising Me. This is a podcast where we explore the joys and the challenges of parenting today with honesty, curiosity, and we try to do it with a whole lot of heart, too. I'm Adrienne Stein, and a very big thank you to our sponsor of Sweetser Behavioral Health, helping so many people of all ages navigate mental health challenges in Maine. Today, boy, this is a good one. We are talking about something that just about every modern parent has felt, whether we admit it or not. So let's be real. It is the pressure to keep up. From curated Instagram posts to those perfect Pinterest parties, it is so easy to fall into the trap of comparison. And with the rise of really what's kind of a buzzword, sharenting, which is sharing all about our kids online, many of us are wondering, so where is that line between celebrating our family and oversharing, right? So my guest today is Dr. Cori Cross. She's awesome, just a wealth of information. Dr. Cross is a pediatrician. She is a digital wellness expert and a fellow parent who brings both medical insight and, of course, some real-life empathy and understanding to this topic as well. So we are diving into how comparison culture affects our parenting, how to protect our kids' digital footprint, and what some small steps are that we can take to model healthy habits at home. So whether you love social media or you feel totally overwhelmed by it, or maybe you're somewhere in between, there is so much good stuff in this episode. Check it out. Dr. Cross, thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm very, very excited about this conversation because I think, even just when we had our pre-call, it went in so many different directions and it impacts all of us. So thanks for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Before we even get started, let's just kind of jump in because not only are you an expert in this, you're actually living it. So where are you in your parenting journey right now?
So I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. My oldest daughter will be turning 17 soon. Then I have a 15-year-old daughter and a almost 13-year-old son. So I have a junior, a sophomore, and a 7th grader.
And of course, you're a pediatrician, well-renowned pediatrician. But you've also sort of locked into really understanding how technology impacts our kids when it comes to, they're growing up with screens and devices really everywhere you turn. What was it that sort of got you interested in that aspect of raising kids and just helping as a pediatrician?
So I got involved with the American Academy of Pediatrics fairly quickly out of residency, and they have a section called Council on Communications and Media. And up until the advent really of the iPad, it was sort of focused on TVs in the bedroom, 2 hours of TV time, all of those things. And then all of a sudden, we get an iPad and things just start to change exponentially.
How so?
So, very quickly, people had personal devices that they were carrying with them everywhere. That wasn't just a phone, right? It wasn't just a phone. It wasn't just texting, and it wasn't just photos. All of a sudden, you could do everything, right? You're checking your emails and whatnot. But then you're getting all these apps, and then the apps become more about, before it was you were taking information in, and then eventually you're putting information out, right? That's how, in my mind, that changes, right? And so that changes childhood. Before, we're worried about what content they're taking in, who they're interacting with, what they're, not who they're interacting with, more what they're seeing, what content they're seeing, right? Later, we're worried about who are they interacting with, because now they can communicate with just about anybody. And then what content are they pushing out, right? And then once you realize that they're pushing out content, you realize that they're also now getting feedback, right? So now you're having these communities where, if you think about it, before they're watching a television show and maybe they're getting the values from that television show, and you're thinking about those values and if they work with your family values. And there was all that thing when I was a child, what type of values we want on TV and what comes on after the kids go to bed versus before the kids go to bed, right? There was that whole thing about whether or not it was on during prime time. Right now, that's the thing because everybody watches things on Netflix. It's always prime time, right? You really you don't even think about it, right?
And not only just that, Cori, but as you're talking about it too, it was a controlled signal coming out, Now it can go in every single direction, and the algorithm is like pulling us in because if we've stopped on this video a little bit longer, it starts adding in that. So yeah,
And there was
no,
a thought process, right? There was
yeah.
a thought process as a parent and as a society as like, what do we want our children exposed to? What do we want to curate for them, right? And it was the same with commercials, right? Like we didn't want cigarettes on TV or we didn't want them in the magazines, right? Like this is all media and we thought about it coming this way. Now, to your point, there's algorithms. So everything we even linger on. So it's just like a pause. It's not even that you're interested in it. If you just pause, the algorithm changes. And I mean, I'm super guilty of this. I pause on things I'm interested in. I also pause on things that totally disgust me because I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
Right? And then you're
It's
like,
fascinating. It's almost like the proverbial car crash, right? You just can't look away from something, even if it's not what you would normally want to
yeah,
engage with.
yes.
Absolutely.
My college roommate said it in a way that will always strike me. She was like, we were talking about something that you really didn't want to engage in. And she was like, it's like roadkill. You cannot help but look at it. And it's like,
Well,
I'm like, you're right. Like
yeah.
you can't, right?
It's a horrible
And
way to think about it, but it's so true.
right. And so, but that's what I feel like when I'm on my feed. Sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness. And then I'm like, oh no, now I'm going to get tons of those. Like, and you have to go in and consciously say, I don't want to see any more of this or take this off my algorithm or whatever. And it's really hard. And so I think that sort of changed childhood and I mean, even adulthood, right? Where you're being tracked by your attention, not really what you want to interest you, but what pulls your attention, right? And that it's not like if you ask me consciously what I wanted to see more of, it would be very different necessarily than what it is I linger on, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's something that we think about. And then also the fact that when you then are pushing out content, right? Even if it's me posting a photo, before if I like shared a photo just to like family or whatever, I know that I'm always going to get back like, kids look great, whatever.
Yeah.
But if I post something online to a larger community, sometimes you get things back that you weren't expecting, or then you're like, why did nobody like this? Right. And so with our children, I don't post that much. And generally it's like, we're on a family vacation. Yay. Like what is there to say bad about that? But, for kids who post a lot more, they get a lot of different type of feedback. And that's all of a sudden something that changes their self-confidence. It changes what they're looking for. And really, when I talk to my kids about posting, it's a lot about what are you hoping to get back from this? Like, because let's think about what it is you're hoping for. Are you hoping that people like it? Are you just trying to show people what you're doing? Are you trying to just communicate things? Like, what is it you want from that? Because if you don't know what it is you want, you're not going to know if you get it.
Oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. And it's also just not kids though, too, right? I mean, as a parent, haven't you posted something and like excited about it? And it's like, oh, well, that fell flat. Even though we know, like, who cares, right? Like I often post because it's a way for me to look back and remember. I was very good with the baby books and all the picture books for the first child. And now by the time you get to the third, it's like, well, I'll post this on Instagram and I can go back and kind of look at it in that way. So
yes,
why do you think that whether it's for parents or when it comes to kids that this can be such a vulnerable thing?
Well, I think we like to connect with people and people just like to be liked, right? We like to do things and get praise and validation. Like that's just human. And I think that social media is a way for us to do that. But because it never shuts off, I think that it ends up having this draw for people that, in my opinion, depending on who you are and how you use it, can feed more of almost like an anxiety in the sense of the, this is going to really date me, in that Billy Joel song, right? Like I am the entertainer, right? Like you have this like top hit. It's great. You're like on top of the world, but you've got to be thinking about the next one because that one's going to fade and what's going to come next because somebody else is going to come up with the next top hit, right? And like, probably nobody's like, people this age don't listen to that song, but like, that's all what it's about. And you're thinking about like, you're at the top of the world and you should be able to enjoy it. And instead, you're constantly thinking about what's coming next. And I feel like when I see people who are very much into posting, it's like you get a great post, like, people are all like, oh, yeah, this is great. And they're thinking about what they're doing next. And like, you didn't enjoy the moment that you posted about because you were trying to make a post. You don't enjoy the feedback you're getting of everybody saying, hey, that was great, because the dopamine hit is so quick that you're thinking about, how do I do this again? And I think that that's a problem.
Yeah. And I think you raise a good point there too. I mean, haven't you been at an event or on a trip or going out to eat where you're thinking, oh my gosh, this would be a great post? I think that happens to people of all ages, right? And they do miss that part of being truly in the moment.
Present, yeah.
Yeah. Like how, so in what ways have you seen, I mean, it's comparison culture, right? We're in the comparison culture that we're currently living in now. How have you seen that impact both kids and parents? Like, what are the impacts of that?
Well, I mean, I think it seems like to me, we're all trying a little bit bigger, right? Like, I don't know, maybe I just grew up in a different community, but it's like, there was no way we would all be wearing like Lululemon and going to Sephora and like, the makeup trends and everything when I was like in 8th grade or in high school. Like, it just wasn't a thing. Like we were happy with, or thought we were like the bomb with, like, much.
For me, it was Timberland boots and like a
I had a pair of Timberland.
right?
Yes.
With the flannel tied around your waist. How about that?
But yeah, so we had those sorts of things, but I feel like I just feel like it's stepped up. I feel like the bar has been raised.
Well, look at all, with the kids with the Sephora hauls using moisturizer that's $70. I got to tell you, I don't use $70 moisturizer, but like these 11 and 12-year-olds are buying $70 moisturizer. That's, again, that's right there in that comparison. They're seeing these influencers using it. It's like kind of a status symbol. So that, absolutely. And, I think the reality, especially for parents, we know social is a highlight reel, right?
Yes.
Even though we know that, it's sometimes hard to, when you're looking at like, oh, wow, that family's always going on great trips. Oh my gosh, everybody looks so happy. Oh, look what their daughter or son is doing. Boy, we got to step up our game. Like, how do we, first of all, those feelings are natural, right? But how do we sort of come to a place where we recognize that, build resilience around it, and just more of like good for them, and kind of move on?
I mean, it's hard, right? It is hard to not compare. I think that is something that we do. I think it's a personal situation. Like for me, I try not to spend a ton of time, right? And I try to not have that be something that I spend just countless amounts of time or every day even checking, right? I might check it to be like, oh, look, everybody went on vacation. I'll do it once and then like let it go for a little bit. And that to me in these bits and spurts feels almost more like getting Christmas cards, right? Like you're like, oh, look, they had fun. I had fun. Like it was a great summer. Wonderful. But if I look at it, continuously, I'm like, wow, I didn't do anything today. Like you all did that today. I did nothing, right? Like that's just, it doesn't make you feel great. Something like that. So I feel like, you have to have your breaks. And for some people, it might be checking it every day, but maybe I know we were talking about this off of this, but we were talking about, figuring out a way to pause and to see, is this how you want to spend your time? So like maybe you've looked at it for 10 or 15 minutes. Is this how I want to spend the next half hour? Or is there something else I want to do that's going to fill me up? And I think of it more like buckets, right? There's some buckets where you're just like zoning out and you're watching a reel, or you're like listening to like some sort of funny comedy thing or a point of view thing. And it's just, it's great to veg. But then there's another bucket where you need to actively have agency in your life and do something. And it's filling that bucket that then allows you to feel good about yourself. And, whether or not you want to post what it is you did, you're doing something that's for you. And I think you need to have both buckets.
I wonder too if, and maybe you've noticed just as a pediatrician who, has spent a lot of time thinking about this. Do you think that like comparison culture in particular, like impacts girls and boys differently, or even, moms and dads, if you take it up to the parent level too?
I think in a lot of studies, it does affect, it seems like, girls more. Maybe they think about it more. I definitely think it also affects boys, though. I think both boys and girls have a lot of fear of missing out, that FOMO. I think there's a lot of, I posted this, what did people think? Like, am I getting the feedback I want? I do think that there's this whole thing about getting a following and how many friends you have. And that's like,
It's like a
quantitative.
status symbol.
Yes.
Yeah. Like
And a lot of
tied to
times with
your worth almost when you're
yeah.
yeah.
And I talk to kids about like, well, do you think if they have like 1,000 followers, like that they would really want to hang out with all of those people, right?
No.
Not all together, but like a lot of them are going to be weirdos. Like, you know,
Yes. Right.
really, let's think about it. Like they wouldn't want to be trapped in a room with probably like 75% of those people, right? So do you care if they're following you or not? And I also talk a lot about influencers like, well, what do you like? I try to explain, like, when I read a review on Amazon as to whether or not I'm going to buy something, and maybe the person spells everything wrong, I'm like, maybe I
That's
don't
not
care about their
really
opinion.
yeah.
Right. Like,
Makes
their
sense.
opinion should count less. Right. And so it's the same with the influencers. So it's like, sometimes I say to them, like, okay, well, this person says this product's good, but what do you know about this person? And
Yeah.
should you trust their opinion? Like, you're the controller of your brain, and who you allow to influence you, you should sort of weed that out. It's fine. We're all influenced by people, but choose who influences you.
Mhm.
And don't let that choice just be that this person influences a million other people, right? They should have something that you connect with, something that you feel makes them worthy of giving you their opinion and you listening to it.
We've heard a lot lately. It's a buzzword, right? It's like a made up word, but the idea of sharenting,
Mm-hmm.
where parents, well, how do you understand, like, what is sharenting? How would you describe it?
I mean, for me, I think sharenting is when parents are sharing what their kids are doing online, right?
But is it just any, hey, so and so scored a goal, or when I hear that term, I feel like it's like, oh, I know those parents. They literally post everything about the kids.
Well, yes, I would say that it's that. It's also that they like, there are some times where you're like, oh, wow. Like, if you were to look at this person's social media, you'd think that kid like walks on water. Whereas, like, I've met that kid and I don't feel the same way, right? Like, this is highly curated. Like, your
This
child's
is
also a little
truly
bit of a
a highlight reel. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. Right.
um,
Right. So what are some of the potential, because obviously there's the whole like people going through the feed, and I mean, look, we all know the parents who literally, like, the kid sneezes and we're going to post about it, right? From the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things. Sometimes I see things and I'm like, gosh, that feels intrusive to
I feel like
post
a lot
about
of
it.
times, yeah,
Yeah.
I think sometimes parents overshare. I don't know if they're asking their children whether or not it's
Yeah.
appropriate to share, but you think that what they put out there, tons of people see, and a lot of times it doesn't go away, right? So there's that idea. I think I was recently talking to a friend of mine. We both have 3 kids. And I said something like, oh, your youngest is amazing at soccer. And she was like, yeah, he is. I said, not for nothing, but I have no idea what your oldest is doing. And she was like, ooh. And she was like, I had been thinking that. She goes, but hearing you verbalize that, she's like, I realized that I am like, not
Yeah.
sharing the same. And I was like, yeah, I was like, well, no, I'm sure he's doing great. She goes, yeah, she's like, he is. He just doesn't do the types of things I can share online. And I told her, I said, actually, I feel the same way. Like, there's certain things that I feel super comfortable sharing online. And so if one of my kids does those things, like, that's an easy share. But all 3 of my kids, I think, are awesome. But if I were to share how a different one of them is awesome, like, I would be oversharing personal stuff because, she's
Mhm.
just more like empathetic. It's more about like emotional stuff where she's really shines. And I don't want to put that into a post. So, she's not scoring the goal at soccer. So what do I say
Right, like
about
the
her?
flashy things.
Right. Yeah.
And that, but empathy and that kindness is just as important. I also think too, like if you're just showing the, we just keep going back to soccer goals because it's an obvious example, or straight A's in the report card. It's really focusing on that end result. And often, like sometimes kids are putting in a lot of time, determination. It's like rewarding just the end result versus that idea that grit and struggle is something to be, celebrated too.
Or can you imagine the post of, hey, so excited my child got a C in chemistry. They had an F, studied all night, and pulled it up to a C. Proud mom. Like you'd probably get a lot of people being like, I've been there, but nobody does that, right?
No, of course. But like there is something to be said for like a child who has come a long way. It's not as flashy to put that online. But what's
the kid who pushes it up from the F to a C is probably the kid who's going to do really well in life because they've had to work hard, right? And they've had to do that. Whereas the kid who can memorize super easily and just always pulls out the A's, you have no idea when they're not able to do something easily. Are they going to know how to put the hard work in to get it, or are they just going to pivot to something that's easy, right? Mm-hmm. But the kid who's had to work hard, that actually is, grit, perseverance, that actually correlates, like back to pediatrician stuff, that actually correlates a lot more with success later in life, is your ability to persevere. And that's why we talk about grit and growth mindset so much, because that is so important to lifelong success. It's just not what we post about.
Right. Well, going back to your friend who has the youngest, the soccer star, and the oldest that used to have no clue what they're up to these days. Like, what is the message? What is the message sending to the kids? Like, when they go back and they look at their parents' proud posts of Johnny and the soccer ball and Susie Q, who just hasn't been included since 2022.
Well, I think it gives our kids the wrong sense of what should be celebrated and what we strive towards, right? Like if it's only just academic success and, sports success, athletic success that we really post about and we celebrate, then what we share kind of illustrates our values to our kids, right? And if we want our kids to know what our values are, then maybe we do have to be more creative about the ways that we share to show that our values, what they are, and how our kids are maybe living those values or how we're living those values.
How much should we share though as parents too? And maybe that's different per age. Like, babies obviously can't consent, but what are some of the things we should as parents of young children be thinking about before we post? And then, kind of moving, I got to tell you, my middle schooler is not interested in me posting literally anything. And my high schooler wants to make sure that it is approved by her before it goes on. So, just when it comes to privacy, like what are some of the things that we should keep in mind as parents when it comes to posting about our kids?
Oh, that's a hard one because I don't think I practice what I preach. I'm not sure, how the overshared kid feels or the undershared kid feels. I do agree that my teenagers definitely want me to check with them before I post the picture. But if I checked with them every time before I post a picture, I'd never post anything because they never think we all look good. And I'm often,
and that's not just her too. She would be like, "Oh yeah, that's not that outfit's not it," or whatever it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, look, the only people who follow me are like my high school friends and your grandparents. Like, don't worry about it. They know what you really look like. So sometimes I don't listen and I'm like, no, but I do the same thing with the Christmas card. So I feel like that's fair. But I do think, to your point, like baby stuff, it's cute as long as it's not embarrassing. But sometimes I feel like we're using our kids as props.
Go say more on that. What do you mean?
Well, we've all seen those social media posts where it's not really about the kid or the family. They're using the children. And I'm not saying that they've set it up. I'm just saying they're using it as sort of, I don't know, a prop. I don't know how else to say it, as a prop to get attention. Right. And I think, I can't think of an example, but I definitely know that feeling when I'm looking at something. I'm like, gosh, like you really shared that. Like, I don't know. And sometimes I feel like parents share more for the other thing I think a lot is like an ego extension. Like this
Yeah.
isn't about the kid. This is about the kid being yours, right?
Mm.
And that you're looking for the praise because you've produced this child and their success looks good on you,
Oh,
right? And that's
boy.
a really odd thing to be doing to your kid, you know?
Well, it's a lot of pressure for the
It
kid
is.
too. So, are there, so then going back to sort of that idea, and, I'm thinking age based, but like, is there like sort of a gut check that we can do before posting something, whether it's, a young child, that middle school age or the high school or even adult?
I mean, I think with a teen kid, it is probably the right thing to ask
Mhm.
them how they feel about like, but if it is a picture of like the entire family and they're like, I just don't like my smile. Sometimes you have to just be like, hey,
Yeah.
your smile looks beautiful to me.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and just let them know that like, it's not about being perfect. Right. And that's what I say sometimes, like, I'm not sharing this because we all look perfect and we're like model ready. I'm sharing this because it's like a really nice experience that we had. And, you know, basically, I just want to let, people know we're having a good time and we're all still alive. Like, like, this is a
Right.
proof of
Proof of
life
life.
post.
Proof of life post. Yeah.
you
No.
know?
No, that's so true. Ultimately it's, being comfortable in your own skin, that it doesn't matter what the likes are or anything like that. Like I said, like for me, a lot of times it is simply like I am terrible about photo albums and books. And so this is
Mhm.
my way of sort of documenting certain time periods of life so that I actually love going back through my Instagram feed, like 2, 3, 4 years back, 5, whatever it is, to sort of like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that was so much fun. And I'm really glad I posted.
Yeah. And it's about remembering the moments, right?
Right.
And so I try to talk to my kids about that too, that it's about the moment, not about like the aesthetics of the photo necessarily, right?
Huh.
You know?
Interesting. But have you noticed with your 17-year-old, and mine's kinda gotten out of that a little bit, where they want things to look blurry, like it's like imperfect. We went through a phase where like the Instagram posts were very like random plates of food, but then something would be blurry and it's all the
They
aesthetic.
have a definitely different aesthetic than I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, I don't think about it very much. I have more recently because I get a lot of feedback from my daughters that I don't take a decent picture.
Mm.
And so, I
I'm sure
appreciate
it's
that.
very blunt. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. But they're always like, Mom, you smile too big, like your cheeks get too big, like you always look too happy. And I'm like, I'm very sorry that I look too happy. I actually am really happy. And they're like, no, but you're not supposed to smile so big. Don't be so happy. And I'm thinking, well, I said, people may think, wow, she doesn't know how to take a picture, but boy, is she happy.
Right. And isn't that fine?
And so I feel like, though, to your point, though, about the blurry and the this and that, like to some point, it is an aesthetic. And I remember being a teenager and thinking about like aesthetics. And it is, it's a natural developmental stage to think about the image you're putting out to the world, right? Like
Mhm.
you
Oh, for
think
sure.
about the fact like teenagers go through all of those like variations of themselves where they have like, this is the goth version, this is the romantic version, this is the athletic version of me, like which one fits? And they try on all of these different versions. I think with their posts, it's the same sort of idea, right? They're trying to find
Mhm.
an aesthetic that represents who they are. The thing
Mhm.
is, I think the difference when it gets into the social like online world as opposed to the real world is that in the real world, you try out an outfit, you try out like a personality, you try out an aesthetic, and you think, okay, that was great for those 2 weeks, but now I'm going to pivot. That doesn't really feel like me, right? Like maybe I was having a moment, but now I want to change. When you're online, I feel like, at least this is what I hear from my daughters, it sounds like they're more sort of almost like curating a brand. And so there's so much more pressure into, does this photo match with the brand I'm trying to portray of myself? And like, my gosh, if I had to think of what my brand was at 13 versus my brand at like 49, like not the same brand, Like, not the same brand at all. So it's hard. And so I think I do see kids pivot, but either people say something when they pivot or it's a very long, I just feel like there's just so much more involved because it's documented. Like you love looking back at the moments, and I think they love looking back at the moments too. But I do think the fact that it's all out there, like the whole progression of it, brings a different weight to them deciding what to post.
Mm. Aren't you glad there wasn't social media back when we were in high school and college?
Oh my God.
I think about that all the time.
hmm Yeah. I mean, even if all of my memories of things are completely off, I like the way that I remember
It's
them.
fine. Right.
Yeah.
There's no proof, there's no evidence. For any parents or guardians or just family who feels like maybe they messed up, maybe they have been oversharing. What would you say to them?
Well, we can all pivot, right? I would say, I think if you've got children that are older, ask their opinions. Maybe go through the feeds and see how they feel about what you've done. And, think about what the feedback is that they give you. And if you agree, I think for little kids, I mean, look, babies and toddlers, they're adorable and fun and funny. And, generally my kids love looking at videos of themselves when they were littler. So I don't know that most adults would grow up and be like, gosh, I wish my parents hadn't posted that silly video of me as a toddler. They're usually like, I was so cute. But do think, is it an embarrassing thing? Or, are you using your child as a prop, or are you just, posting this to bring joy to other people who might find your kid doing something silly, as endearing as you do? So I think understanding your motivation, I think if you want to maybe post more to share and less for validation, don't look at the comments, right? Look at the comments like a week, 3 or 4 days later. Like, don't be there waiting as things come in to see if people like it. Post it and then be done with it, because you're posting it to share. And then, look at the comments later, because you might want to be like, oh yeah, hi, how are you too? Because people like send you that, like, whatever. But it's almost like when you get your finals back, like 2 weeks after finals are over, the grade matters less, right? Than if you get it back at that exact moment. So I think that not reading the comments as they come in and waiting and being like, hey, wait, why is nobody liking this or whatever? I think that time gives you a pause.
I think one of the things I just want to outline, and I outlined this in the notes when we talked earlier too, is really just understanding that motivation. Why are you both, what is the validation you're looking for? And that really can change your perspective going into the next post. Cause like, who cares? And just for kids to pause, it's what's my motivation? Is it just, I love this picture. We had so much fun. I want to have it to look back on. Or is my motivation to get 50 likes or whatever it is? And if that doesn't happen, okay, then what? Does it change who you are as a person? No.
Right. And I also think, like, really thinking about, like, when you post something about your kids, if it's something silly and funny like a toddler, I don't know what it says. But, when you post something about their achievements, what does that say to them about how you feel about their achievements? What does it say to your other children about how you feel about this? Like, you have to just think about it a little bit. And I think going back again through your posts and seeing, like, what is it that I tend to post about? What does this say to my kids about what my values are and what I praise them for? And it might be online. It might also be in person, right? What do we praise our children for? We praise them a lot of times for coming home with the good grades. Do we also praise them for being kind? Do we also praise them for when they, are empathetic, or when they notice that something needs to be done in the house and they take the initiative to do it because they're paying attention? Like, do we make the same big deal about that as like the 100 on like history? And, we all know they're going to forget the history. So, maybe we should praise the things that are these lifelong values.
100%. I mean, and as a parent, like to come home and one of my kids cleaned the kitchen without being asked, or went ahead and vacuumed, or whatever, like that feels as good, frankly, because it's a personality. It's a characteristic that you want, your kids to be proactive or think about the needs of others. Like, that is such a wonderful thing. It is harder to show that. for sure.
Can you imagine if we took a picture of the vacuum and then like put like a thing? It was like, came home to a clean house. Boy, is this kid going to be a great college roommate.
You know what, Dr. Cross? I mean, I kind of love that as a post. And I will say, I feel like some people would share that.
Yeah,
You know?
maybe.
And fine, love it. So anyway, well, that's some great takeaways, Dr. Cross. I really, really appreciate it. I also want to let our listeners know we'll have additional resources online. We'll send them also to the link to your page as well, if anybody wants to get in contact with you. But really, really appreciate your time.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking to you.
Okay, so I got to tell you, there is so much to unpack with this conversation with Dr. Cross. The part that really stopped me in my tracks was when she talked about parents using their kids as props online, posting for attention or validation without even realizing it, right? That idea of ego extension, where our child's success becomes a reflection of us. I mean, think about it, right? It's such a good reminder to pause before we post and say, why am I sharing this? Am I celebrating my child, or am I curating maybe my own highlight reel? And I just love Dr. Cross's advice to involve older kids in the conversation. I mean, maybe even ask them how they feel about what you share and whether it embarrasses them. You got to find the healthy balance there. Another great takeaway, for me anyway, was when she talked about what we choose to praise, how easy it is to make a huge deal about that big winning goal or, the 100 on the history test. But maybe we should be making just as big of a deal about kindness, empathy, and initiative, those lifelong skills that really matter most. So yeah, I am all about that, that vacuuming post. So just a huge thank you to Dr. Cross for sharing her insight, her compassion, and just really great guidance on parenting in the digital age. If this conversation resonated with you, certainly you are not alone. So many of us are trying to figure this out as we go, really. So you can find more of Dr. Cross's work at coricrossmd.com. We're going to have links to that on our website. Lots of great resources there. Thank you also to our sponsor of Sweet Surf for supporting this conversation. I'm Adrienne Stein, and this episode was edited by Megan Littlefield with production assistance from Carissa Paulson. Be sure to follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like this episode, please consider leaving a positive rating and review so others can find it as well. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.